Welcome to this rapid revision session on the Gold Rush and Law and Order. The Gold Rush of 1849. This is why the San Francisco 49ers are called as they are. This is an American football team in California, specifically San Francisco, which is named after the 49ers, the people who arrived during the Gold Rush of 1849. In 1846, the population of the West Coast Territory of California, not yet a state, was 8,000 people. That wouldn't hardly be a decent-sized town in England right now. By 1850, though, this had swollen to 120,000. Still not many people given the size of the place, but it's a massive increase. By 1855, this had swollen up to 300,000. The answer to the reason why is gold. Quite simply, people were looking to get rich quick, like this fella who's doing a bit of gold panning here. In 1849, gold was discovered in California. People from the East, desperate to get rich quick, began flooding into California, and this was known as the Gold Rush. Okay, strictly, the gold was discovered in 1848, but it continued to be discovered, and that's what led to the 1849 Gold Rush the year after. But this caused some problems, and let's consider the life of the gold prospector. On the one hand, there were lifestyle and rights for gold prospectors, and there were problems also. Often, the lifestyle and rights of the gold prospectors directly led to the problems that followed. For example, prospectors followed a California law about staking a claim, so everyone had a fair share of land to go and find their gold in. But claim jumpers stole claims from other miners if they felt it looked promising. Salting a claim was where gold flakes would be sprinkled on worthless land, which would be sold to inexperienced prospectors who didn't know any better. So we can see that the prospectors' rights and lifestyle about staking a claim directly led to these two problems. But what else? Road agents robbed miners of their gold. Also, prostitutes and gambling were common in male-dominated mining camps. This led to the problem of drunken fights that could erupt between men fighting over the very few women in town. Prospectors were usually armed with guns to protect themselves. This could make those drunken fights even more serious. Prospectors came from all over the country, and indeed the world. Cultural and racial differences were common. But racial and cultural differences between prospectors could result in fights too. So we can see that there's an issue of racism here as well. Clearly, the lifestyle and rights of the gold prospectors were distinctive, but they led to many problems. These problems led to a desire to keep law and order, and here we've got something of a tension between the official federal authorities versus local people who wanted to sort out their problems for themselves. Here's how each one tried to address the problems of law and order associated with the gold rush. But it's worth remembering that some of these different features could also apply to other communities in the West, but they are particularly notable within the gold communities. When a territory reached a population of 5,000 people, as California had, a sheriff could be elected for a county. By 1849, the population of San Francisco had grown from 1,000 people to 25,000 people. In 1852, 20,000 Chinese migrants arrived, fleeing famine in their home country. This explosion in growth led to tension, including racism. Vigilante groups often acted in racist ways too, adding to the problem. And it's worth bearing in mind that vigilantes are those people who took the law into their own hands. Federal officers could be appointed, such as US Marshals. In 1851, though, there was a crime wave. People could murder virtually anyone at will. San Franciscans refused to accept the situation, feeling that the federal authorities were not doing enough to solve it. But there were attempts to do something about it. There were attempts to work with local people and prevent vigilantism. The sheriffs and the US Marshals could raise a posse to help apprehend criminals. However, the people of San Francisco, fearing corruption in official courts, took the law into their own hands quite often. On one occasion, they formed a 200-strong vigilance committee to enforce law and order themselves, rather than relying on federal authorities. As the population in the territory passed 60,000, California could become a state. And with a state government, that meant that they could create their own state laws and law enforcement too. But the vigilance committees were not done. Vigilance committees captured 89 people in 1851. They found around 50% of them not guilty, so it wasn't simply a case that they were always found guilty. Around 25% were deported and told to leave, and 15 were handed over to the authorities. A small number, were hanged, but it is often exaggerated just how many people were hanged by the vigilance committees. Officials, though, had huge challenges. One officer might have to cover 200 square miles travelling by horse. By the time they arrived on a crime scene, vigilantes had often acted already, or the criminal had got away. There was little training, less money, and some federal officials became quite corrupt. Vigilantes were effective, though, and they were fast, often the first on the scene. However, although it can be exaggerated, they often hanged people without a fair trial, so that they were feared. But that was part of their power. By being feared, they hoped that they would deter people from committing crimes. So how did this work out? This is one way of expressing how different problems led to different uses of vigilante justice. So mass migration from the gold rush contributed to the following things: new crimes like claim jumping, social unrest as most prospectors actually failed and didn't make any money, and it also caused unemployment, more crimes like theft, assault and murder, a disorderly lifestyle, male communities with alcohol and prostitution, and a new ethnic mix which led to tensions, especially Chinese migrants. This was made worse by a slow response by the US government, poor funding of law and order by the government, the geography of the area, huge areas for law officers had to travel in order to control. Corruption too, bribing of some law officials by criminals so that they could get away with murder, sometimes literally. And racist attitudes that led to racist laws and racist law enforcement. All of this was seen to be resulting in community laws and law enforcement by vigilance committees, or vigilantes for short. So how might you put this into an exam answer? In the Edexcel exam, you might have to answer a question called a narrative account. Here you've got to show how things are linked together in chronological order in order to explain a story and how it develops. So you might phrase it like this: mass migration in the gold rush contributed to more crimes like theft, assault and murder. This was made worse by corruption or bribing of some law officers by criminals, resulting in community laws and law enforcement by vigilance committees. That's a very simple, structured writing frame of how to write part of a narrative account answer, but you'd need to link it back to the question too. This was because people did not trust official law enforcement to apply the law in a fair and just way. And there we go, we've got an extra bit of analysis there of our narrative. If you did this several times, that would be not a bad narrative account of how mass migration led to the use of vigilance committees. It might look like this. So an example paragraph in a real exam answer might look like this. The mass migration of the gold rush in 1849 contributed to the occurrence of new crimes in California, such as claim jumping, where after a legal claim to prospect in an area had been made, another prospector moved in to find gold. This would often lead to further disorder. This was made worse by the good geography of California. What few US marshals and sheriffs there were often heard about crimes too late to act on them because of the distances that needed to be covered to report crimes and respond to them. This resulted in local people taking the law into their own hands by setting up vigilance committees, which could more quickly respond to crimes, even if their judgments were not backed up by the US government. Notice I've put in capitals there some of the linking sentences to show how you are showing one thing is leading to another is leading to another. Some final points then. The gold rush saw the population of California explode from 8,000 to 300,000 in 9 years from 1848. But the main gold rush was in 1849. Increased population, failed miners, racism and a lack of law enforcement led to huge problems with law and order. Local people took the law into their own hands, forming vigilance committees. Vigilantes were often effective, but they could often be unjust as well, killing people without a fair trial. But that sums up the gold rush and the problems of law and order that resulted. I hope that was useful to you, and if it was, please like the video. If you need any more content like this, then I strongly recommend that you subscribe, because I'm uploading lots of different videos all the time on this rapid revision series. If you're desperate for me to cover a particular topic, pop it in the comments below. I'll see what I can do. Other than that, I hope that has been useful, and thanks very much for watching.